Hello, I'm Superbose. Welcome to this Future Net Zero podcast. And this is a very interesting chat today. I'll be having with Anthony Ainsworth from E.ON's INC business because we'll be talking about politics. And let's face it, on the eve of the general election, policy is going to be vital for all of us in the energy and net zero space because it is policy that drives everything from our targets to the way budgets are set, to the way business gets involved, and the way you and I, as consumers, will have to either pay for it or deal with it or adapt to it. So I'm delighted to say Anthony Ainsworth is with me today. Hello, Anthony. How are you?
Hi, Sumit. It's great to see you again.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
Now, I said that you're Chief Operating Officer at E.ON's INC business, but explain what it is, because people will remember npower, obviously, and people will know E.ON, but a few changes have happened over the last few years. So you can just bring us up to speed to what the business is now.
Absolutely.
When it comes to what you're doing.
We call ourselves npower Business Solutions, but we are powered by E.ON. We're part of the E.ON family.
Yep.
And I look after this business. We have about 20,000 of the UK's largest businesses that we supply power and gas to, and some solutions as well. So we also help them with their net zero challenges, generation services, data and metering. So it's quite an integrated business, and we think we're pretty good at what we do.
And that amalgamation, obviously different skills in those two companies. What do you think you're offering now that putting those two together?
So businesses want some certainty with their energy provider. So they want somebody that's going to be around for the long term. And we've had a bit of an energy crisis and some bumps in the energy market. So being here for the long term is critically important. And also, this is a complex market. There's a huge amount of volatility, some liquidity challenges at times. So they want people that can help navigate the complexities of all that for them, but equally make it simple, be easy to do business with. So some of our biggest customers spend 200 or 300 million pounds a year with us on energy. That's a big bill.
Yeah,
they need a really strong partner to work with on that.
You've been in the sector a long time, right? I mean, we've been around a while. We've kicked the thing. And I'll look back on when we launched Energy Live News, the precursor to what we're doing with Future Net Zero. And it was really about your supplier was pretty much money, right? How much is it going to cost me? How am I getting my power? It's transformed itself over the last 14 years.
Yeah.
What is a business solution, the way you rebrand? Why do you say that?
So what we've seen over the last years, and I've been here for about 12 years, you're absolutely right. It was about power and gas commodity supply.
Commodity supply, that's
it. And now there's much more focus from businesses. The prices are high, market prices are high. So this is a C-suite topic. Energy is a C-suite topic for the cost of it. And also it's a C-suite topic now because businesses want to play their part in the net zero transition. Okay. So it is good business for them, for their own customers and stakeholders to be on that journey. But a net zero transition also means that you're saving carbon, and over time you should be saving cost as well. Businesses like to invest. CFOs like to invest in a business to make it more efficient, to improve the returns. CEOs like to grow their business, cut their costs, keep their stakeholders happy. So the solutions businesses, the net zero solutions, is how do we help businesses, large or small, understand their energy consumption, be more energy efficient, source green power, potentially even generate their own power, and then use the flexibility from those assets back into the system. So there's a multi-pronged approach to net zero solutions for businesses.
And this is the change, isn't it? Suppliers, like you said, 12 years ago, your job was give someone power, right? Have a chat with them once every year or 3 years when their contract ended and sell them some more power. You've had to change because of what's changed. Do you think all of this has happened because 5 years now, since 2019, when Theresa May's government, can't remember which Prime Minister that was, but anyway, Theresa May's government set into law, Chris Skidmore, who's speaking at our Big Zero show, wrote into law the target of 2050. So my question to you is, do you think that really fundamentally changed things for exactly that reason? Because as businesses could have said, yes, the trilemma, we're doing sustainability. Now they had a target. Now they had something set by the government. It was policy driving it, carbon budgets driving it, and that meant they had to adhere, and you, as a supply company, had to change as well. Has that been transformational, that target?
Not, I would say not necessarily from a business point of view, right? So it's been transformational from the sources of power that we generate in the UK. So when I joined E.ON 12 years ago, we still had coal power stations, and
Sure.
coal was part of the energy mix, and it's practically zero now, isn't it? There's nothing.
No, yeah.
And wind power is going to be the dominant part of production from the second half of the year. So the system itself has changed. The need to balance the system, storage in the system, that's changed because of those types of policy changes and directives. But there's not been that much aimed at businesses per se.
Right. Do you not think it's crystallised the view of CEOs and CFOs? Because
I don't.
That's quite interesting.
I don't think it has, but I will explain what has. So I don't think it has because this government, previous governments, are not really aiming sufficient legislation, whether that is encouraging investment or encouraging abatement of CO2 into corporate business legislation, right? The rules for businesses.
Yeah.
I don't think there's enough to push that. What has made the difference, particularly over the last few years, is from the CEO's point of view of keeping stakeholders and customers happy, being on that net zero transition.
Right.
And in recent years, in particular, with the cost of energy, being so high, it now appeals to a CFO to say, if I invest in energy efficiency, I'm going to bring my bills down, right? So you
think it's been a fiscal driver rather than a policy driver?
Correct. That's what we see. So the research that we've done over the last few years, we've done a business energy tracker with big businesses over the last few years. They all say we want to play our part in net zero.
Yeah.
We have a role to play, and we want to do it as businesses. We, the businesses, do not feel there is sufficient policy clarity to drive that, not enough incentives to drive that. And also, they will also say there's too much red tape, there's too much planning regulations, it's difficult to get things done. So that's consistently what we see businesses say. It's an important topic, we want to play our role, but the government is not aiming legislation at this big chunk of middle tier businesses. If you're a very intense energy user, if you want any industrial clusters, yes, they're aiming it around that, but not really aiming at your supermarkets, your manufacturers, your small businesses. And I think there's more that can be done there.
We'll talk about the politics of the three major parties before in a moment. But just picking up on what you've said there, you talk to businesses. How much do you think? Because I would say the public are far more engaged than they've ever been, right? And that has happened in these last kind of 5 years. The Greta Thunberg, the protest groups, the stuff around plastic because David Attenborough filmed that turtle. It doesn't matter what it is. Suddenly, you've had that, and you've had the other thing that consumers really see, which is EVs, right? Electric vehicles suddenly have started to think. Do you think some of the CEOs you talk to, they're actually having to respond, maybe not, as you say, maybe it's fiscal rather than policy, but they're also because consumers are changing. Consumers want something that says, are you doing something that's less harmful to the planet?
Exactly. So that's exactly how I'd characterize it. So it is that, it's a fiscal driver, financial driver for the CFO, but for the CEO, it's those stakeholders, customers, society, investors expect you to be doing these things, moving down that pathway. And yes, I suppose in a way, legislation pushes things back through supply chains. You've got source 1, 2, and 3 of your emissions, for example. So that puts some onus on businesses to start to clear up. But really, I think clean business is a good business.
Let's talk about politics. We've had the big three parties. Some will say there might be a fourth, but I'll ignore that for now. We've had the big three parties laying out their stalls. And basically, it's kind of, the world is great. Lib Dems, let's do everything. Let's go for it. Labour is, we're going to create a British energy company, Great British Energy, which still I can't quite work out what it is from any of the people I know in Labour, but we'll move that. And Tories will say, look, we want to do it, but we don't want to really burden the consumer in the time of this energy crisis with more green levies. So let's just take them one at a time. Let's start with the Tories at present, because obviously they are the government at present. Depends, who knows what will happen in the election. But where do you see what they've put out, and what do you think is interesting? What do you think is probably not right for what businesses are?
Yeah. So for all of them, I'll come at it from the business point of view rather than the sort of residential market, B2C.
No, absolutely.
There is a lot of commonality in all the policies, actually.
Yeah.
We're talking about time frames being slightly different, and the mix of energy, the mechanisms being slightly different in there. But all of them are on the net zero journey.
Yeah, I mean, that is the one positive. No one's saying we're gonna row back from it. Well, no one normal saying that anyway.
No. So if you look at the Conservative policy, it's the two CCUS clusters, investing and pushing forward the carbon border mechanism, which is so that you're not cheating by putting your production offshore and importing things.
Absolutely.
That's not really making the country net zero. You're exporting your problem elsewhere.
Yeah.
So there's that, and then whether it's gas power stations that you need to keep the system alive and strong, but then it's nuclear, small nuclear reactors, and their bit is more about offshore.
Yes,
wind.
They're big on offshore wind, aren't they?
Big on offshore wind capacity, but broadly, if you then shift to Labour, if we can sort of carry on and do that, they're also talking about carbon capture, use and storage, also talking about the carbon border mechanism, also talking about nuclear and small modular reactors in there, and then their mix is slightly different. So on doubling the onshore wind capacity, tripling solar, and also a huge increase in offshore. So the policies are broadly similar.
Yeah.
It just depends on how much you're going to put onshore, how much you're going to put offshore.
One of the things that, sorry, just before we go to
then you've got GB Energy, which, my understanding that is almost like a sovereign wealth fund that's going to invest in renewable production capacity.
Yeah, well, that's my view, is that it's supposed to own the assets. Right, so it's going to create the wealth to say we own a wind farm or a solar farm, but then you use it. But of course, there isn't any detail about it yet, and I can't been able to find it. And I've spoken to some very senior people in the industry who still don't know. We should touch on the Lib Dems, who've really gone for it quite big. So what do you think the things to watch out from Lib Dem policy are?
Any energy transition that we have, and we are in an energy transition, which means we're moving from one state to another.
Yeah.
I think to make that effective, it needs to be a balanced transition. So you need to wean yourself off fossil fuels over time. You need to build up the capacity for renewables over time. You need to be able to balance the grid, and you need to be able to trade off the cost of doing those things. And from a business point of view, you want the nation, UK PLC, to remain competitive. You want to protect jobs along the way.
They want to move the target through to 2045, right? And most people are saying we're going to struggle to get to 2050. Now, look, I'm not saying any of these things are wrong, and ambition is great. But if I'm a business, right, and everyone should vote the way they feel, whatever happens in this election is going to set the framework for probably the most important 5-year term, aren't we? Because we're basically getting from when the target was set to now 2030 is the big marker, because we've got to hit certain targets by 2030 if we're ever going to get near the 2050 target. So looking at it, would you say businesses should be mindful that could be a lot of policy changes, or do you think this will sort of work itself out. You know what happens? Any new government, if it is a new government, things wash out, things come and go. If you're going to plan for your own business, whatever, what are you going to say? How do you think, are we going to have massive shake-ups of policy, or do you think it's going to be as it goes, but certain things will affect us in a big way?
So from what I gleaned reading through the manifestos and hearing the speeches and the rhetoric, a lot of the initial attention is going to be on the sources of energy production.
Yeah.
So how much wind, where is it, how much solar, how much nuclear, on making sure that the grid system can cope with that amount of renewables in the system. I think also looking at the cost of energy and protection for consumers, residential consumers, there'll be a lot of focus on that, strengthening Ofgem's remit, etc. But I don't hear a lot about what is going to be done to encourage businesses, or even to make it a bit tougher to do the things that aren't so great for the net zero journey. So I think the policy focus is going to be on those bigger things, and then the rest will follow.
What do you think are the non-negotiables for the next government? I think you've got to be very careful, because we believe in the phrase "better business, better planet," right? And it is going to change us as consumers, you and me. Our mobile phones are not going to go away, but if they're cleaner and greener, that's great. The clothes we wear, if they're cleaner and greener, this will happen. But business have got to find a way of making profits. They've got to make a way of doing this sustainably, and they have to install and do things and invest in that, right? So if you were going to say to whoever government gets in, listen, guys, this is, these are the red lines for businesses, what would you say?
So as I said earlier, this is about a balanced energy transition that keeps the UK economy competitive on a global basis and protects jobs and incomes and livelihoods. So if you take a very extreme view on any of the dimensions of that system could become more fragile.
Yeah.
So for me, the red line, if you like, is make sure that this is a balanced transition as we go through. That's one. But the second thing, from a business point of view, is businesses are used to investing over a long-term cycle. So whatever the policies are that come out that are aimed at business, is have policy clarity early, be consistent with that policy, and make sure that those policies are enduring for a period of time, 5 to 10 years, and give businesses the confidence that they can invest for the medium to long term in understanding their energy consumption, being more energy efficient, controlling and generating their own energy, etc. And as I said earlier, businesses want to invest; they want to play their part in net zero, and a consistent policy framework is the absolutely critical thing for me. Not this one year.
Yeah, I get that absolutely, and I think that's the same thing we hear, which is people want. Can we just have whatever it is, just set it out so we can follow it for a while?
Yes.
What about tax breaks? What about incentives for business?
Well, the incentives are, I think, from the current government, are the deductibility of the investments in energy efficiency, energy generation. If you want to encourage people to do those things, then keep encouraging them to do those things. So again, the consistency for that. But over time, it's a bit like building the first wind farm required a subsidy. The next wind farm doesn't. So over time, diffusion of innovation, everything gets a bit cheaper. So you want to encourage it to start it off. You want to encourage businesses to go with incentives and deductions, but maybe over time, in the next part of the business cycle, that won't be necessary.
Red tape. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there's a flipping lot of it, right? So if you've been following what's going on, I won't go into parties, but, build a wind farm tomorrow. Do a survey, looks great, you can do it, and then it gets held up in planning for maybe 8, sometimes 10 years before you get it.
Yeah.
What are businesses wanting when it comes to red tape?
So I think
you can't get rid of all of it, can you? You can't.
I'd really love to sort of issue this challenge out there now, Sumit. Let's cut the red tape. Let's cut the red tape, because if we really want to make this transition happen, this energy transition happen in the UK, we can't do it over the next 10 years the way that we've done it over the last 10 years. Whichever party comes in if they want to increase renewable capacity in the UK, you're going to have to speed up that planning process. You're going to have to take the national interest at heart here and future generations' interest at heart here over perhaps a small community view of things. Now, nothing against that, but we've got to see the big picture here about this big transition over the next 20, 25 years. And to do that, you've got to cut through the red tape, get planning simpler, get grid connections faster, strengthen that grid quicker, and make sure that that national picture emerges. I think everybody's got to take one for the team on this one for the UK.
Do you think we can get to that there is this, because it is very hard, isn't it, right? MPs, whoever gets in, they've got constituencies. And society says, let's build a wind farm or a solar farm. Great. And the constituent people say, we don't want it in our backyard. We don't want the noise. We don't want the disruption. Let's build nuclear. We don't want that, So that is a real hard balance for any politician, isn't it?
Absolutely. But whoever comes in is going to have 5 years. You can get a lot done in 5 years. And I think attitudes will also change at the end of the 5 years. So get those planning regulations changed, cut the red tape, start building stuff that everybody benefits from. And I think the debate will have moved on in 5 years' time, and people will be a little more interested in those things.
When you talk to businesses, how do you think they're feeling right now? They've had, you think about it, Brexit, they've had the pandemic, they've had the Russian invasion and the war in Ukraine, the energy shocks that have happened around that, the issues in the Middle East, so many things globally, the political situation between China, America, there's so much that's gone on. Supply chains have been affected. It's been tough for businesses, but I generally find people are still kind of dedicated and positive towards trying to do things better and heading towards net zero. What's your take on it?
I think if you've got a little bit of scale in your business, if you've got some profitability in your business, then you've got the ability to, ride the tough times and invest and grow for the better times ahead. So I think a large amount of businesses are used to different business cycles, investing for the future, tightening their belts, changing their processes, modernizing things. It's just the natural cycle of business. We're doing it all the time. But with energy prices so high over the last couple of years, the government needed to step in to protect businesses and protect jobs. But we've come off the peak of that now, and I think energy bills are a bit more affordable for businesses. So the good businesses, the strong businesses, continue to be strong and invest for the future. The ones that were struggling a little bit needed some protection for sure, and that came through.
Are you a positive believer in 2050? Do you think we'll hit it?
Gosh, 2050, 26 years ago, I think I'll almost be 80 by then.
I will be over 80, so
yeah, which is a bit scary. So you get to a certain age and it isn't about you anymore.
No, exactly. That was funny. I was thinking that myself.
Yeah.
What sort of world are we going to have for our kids and grandkids? Yeah.
Yeah, and my grandson. So my grandson then will be getting close to 30. In that time frame, and I would want to think that having had a senior role in the energy industry, that I had taken the responsibility that goes with that and played my part in helping the energy transition. So I am positive because I think technology will find a way, because it does, because businesses want to invest in the right things. And I genuinely want to make this a slightly better place for my kids and my grandson,
It's a great ambition on which to end. Anthony, thank you so much for joining us on this podcast. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks, Stuart. Great to see you again.